I'd now like to call upon stage Mr. Hiranmay Mahanta, CEO, Gujarat Student Startup Hub and Innovation Hub, to say a few words.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Sorry, I was supposed to come a little early. So how many of you are game developers? Oh, quite a bit. Good number. Okay, so I must congratulate IGDC conference organizer here today to getting so many people. Also UID, KCCI and all other people who have got all of you. How many of you are students? Okay. A few. Okay, wonderful. So I was told that this is the first ever IGDC intervention in Gujarat. So I congratulate all of you to coming down to the happening state. I must point few facts which Bharat Bhai and Colonel Bose mentioned me to talk to you, what the government looks to your industry at a standpoint. I deal with the startup policies and startup support system of government. And when we deal with different sectors, we realize that each sector need a very differential treatment. And I will tell you how. So if I give you a little bit of numeric numbers, out of around 100,000 startups listed in Ministry of Commerce in last 10 years, around 2,000 of them come into your category. Interestingly, if I compare it with any other verticals of technology entrepreneurship in India, this sector is not that much, caused by the funding winter and something, than it is affected by taxation and other regulatory things. Agree karte hain aap log? Those who are into gaming industry. So one thing that I want to put before you, you will have a lot of sessions, a lot of intellectuals talking today. If you can get us one pager recommendation, because now the new IT Act is going to come next year, right after the government enacted, a lot of things are going to happen. And sectors like you should focus on recommendation which can help on the taxation aspects of the gaming, particularly e-gaming industry. And I was told, last year I was talking to a few gaming startups and they told that one of the reasons they were choked was not because of lack of VC funding in that industry, but because of the regulatory regime that affects you. So one thing that I request all of you is, if some of you have, क्योंकि आप सब लोग जमीन पे काम करने वाले लोग हैं, you understand the bits and pieces how it get hits, right? How GST hits you, how many other things hits you. So if this conference can bring out little recommendation note on how we should look as a system designer from the policy standpoint to help you grow as an industry. Ultimately, sometimes pushing a bar little up or down decides how large you go or how farther you penetrate, right? That's one request from this conference. And of course, there are few academic researchers at UIT and others can take up this challenge and look into how do we shape this from that standpoint. The second important thing is, many of you might not be knowing, when we hosted national games in Gandhinagar last year, we had a special section for showcasing the prowess of digital gaming industry and the entire gaming spectrum. Of course, not in the context of how they fit into the mandate of national games, but to let the stakeholders realize that how digital gaming and the allied ecosystem can influence the entire vertical. I remember we showcased around 50 odd startups from across the country who have direct or indirectly have impact on the spectrum of national games, right? So that means even in the top level in the government, we are considering that there should be disruptions happening, right? But couple of things that we noticed when we got these startup companies coming and talking to government and others, we realized that there is a lot of scope for indigenization of this industry. What I mean by indigenization is not in the technology standpoint. Of course, your GPUs, CPUs, everything is happening at a global standard pace. But there are a lot of cultural sensitivity and there are a lot of domestic gaming phenomenon जो हमारे startups कहीं ना कहीं miss कर जाते हैं. They don't realize कि if they can indigenize something in the context of India's socio-cultural aspects or APEC's socio-cultural aspects, there might be a very different public perception about what you build. See, you are building a technology standpoint, but how does that fit into a socio-cultural context? Also hits how do you make money out of it. And I was told this time when I was given a note about IGDC, I was briefed that you have a special appetite for women taking part in games, right? And I was this is very interesting. If you can see this hall, I can see 2 to 3% women around, right? But the focus that you want women's participation both in the spectrum of developing the games and also in terms of, creating distribution ecosystem, creating brands around it. I think that is a very important factor. I was told in a mythical story that the person who built the game chess was a lady, right? The wife of Demon King Ravana, right? So if we have historical anecdotes, of course, in mythical label, that how games were designed, and then later on tools and platforms and technologies came to get it going. So I think that's a scope is how do we indigenize it. I remember when we did a program with UID two years before the National Toy Innovation Challenge at the call of Honorable Prime Minister. We realized that a lot of these, of course, when I mean toy, gaming also comes in the part of that. And we had a nationwide competition. Honorable Minister was involved in that thing, and UID played a very vital role in hosting that at national level. We saw a lot of participation coming from the gaming side. Unfortunately, we had no idea how to create an incubation, acceleration, and funding ecosystem around that, because sometimes some industries are ahead of regulatory systems. And I think your industry is one system which is evolving faster than the regulatory is catching it. So, I mean, and this is how I urge Bharat Bhai, his Knowledge Chamber of Commerce, and all other people. If you can put down a certain piece of on-ground, user-centric recommendation that what is that we as policy designers should look into, this will help it. Because sometimes by changing the goalpost a little bit left, right, and center helps that industry really well. And I was happy when Colonel Bose mentioned about the commitment of design schools like UID to bring in that skills, because every industry or every segment of market is as competent as its workforce. And today we export $100 billion of IT because as a nation we produce 1 million graduates in information technology, right, every year. So how can we also create the workforce in this industry? And of course, as I could sense from your presentation, the workforce is not linearly educated. They are interdisciplinary. They have an aspect of design, animation, technology, all gamut of things. So I think this is one area, and I was just looking into data of all NIDs put together, how many graduates coming out in gaming, design, and others. I think the numbers are quite less for a country of 1 billion headcounts, right? So also the responsibility of academia comes in picture, that how do we produce more human resources in this sector? And I was just have a conversation with the Jirodha founder, and he says, why do you think gaming as a secondary preference? And why do you think gaming as only a hobby? Why not it be a professional industry to take it? And I think that's how we need to talk about in a social context a lot. Our home conversation, our community conversation, our public conversation should not treat gaming is just like कि आपके पास आधे घंटा है तो आप fun gaming करो. It should treat you like a mainstream industry. And to make that happen, so one side we need to build the culture, one side we need to create a regulatory support system so that I was told a lot of regulation affects this industry because all this gets roots into the act of gambling and everything, which is a 100-year act in this country now. So how do you look at technology development, human capital development, and regulatory surging? These three things are very essential. I'm sure many of developers, many of young startups and SMEs in the states are very committed to do this thing. As I was telling, out of 100,000 startups, hardly 2,000 are into tech gaming. But of course, if I come down to Gujarat, the numbers are quite less. But today I see a lot of young people coming down and creating things using augmented reality, mixed reality, and of course in NFTs and other domains. And of course, one very important aspect that I see when venture funds talk to us to invest in startups is there are other sectors like marketplaces, D2C and others where business models has been validated in India. Because such business model existed in Western market where the similar venture funds have invested and made money. In your industry, there are hardly any precedences outside for VCs who have invested in your business model and made money. Hence, they are also skeptical investing in companies in India. But that situation is changing, and that is an option. When you don't have an precedence of existing business model, you have an opportunity to create your own business model here. So I think that also has a scope that let us figure out that how can we think of a new way of monetizing how this industry works, how these products goes in. I mean, in terms of distribution of game, how do you? I was told that some of the startups are trying to create indigenized own domestic India-centric platform for distribution of these apps and everything else, which is really good because so that you don't come under any regulation which controls you. So in nutshell, what I am expecting from this conference of one day here is, can you come down with certain points after every speaker or session and give us some recommendation that, boss, these are certain things when the new Information Technology Act is going to be amended, they are going to be very cautious about security stuff in your gaming industry. They are very cautious about how do you not get killed by taxation regime, despite you have an innovation on the ground, and also how do we create large pool of human capitals to fuel this industry. So these are certain puzzles that bothers us when we look at this industry, but we are super committed. I welcome you all, those who have come to Gujarat from outside and also from local ecosystem. And I congratulate all the partners who sponsored this program, UID and entire team. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that really inspiring speech, sir. And now I know why we call it Vibrant Gujarat, because we see the energy coming from the top to the bottom level as well. I must tell you, Gujarat is one of the places we had to come to because it's one of the few states in India that does not have development happening only in the capital city. I mean, we've got like developers here from Surat, from Rajkot and the like. So we've got, the ecosystem is fairly widespread in Gujarat, and that's kudos to probably like the initiative that people at the government take at some level. Before you go away, sir, I'd like to call upon Colonel Surajit Bose to give a token of appreciation to Mr. Bharat Patel and Mr. Hiranmay Mahanta. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Hiranmay is talking about a lot of things in his talks on like measurements on the kind of monetization that games can do, the kind of games being built, indigenous IPs. I must tell you the next few talks are going to be centered on some of this.